I want to welcome my two friends, Tony and Melissa, Melissa Maher and Tony Springer from Mercy Street Church in Houston. That is a fellowship that really focuses on the recovery community as a part of its ministry. And in this pandemic moment, I got to thinking the other day, how are we as church reaching out to um, to be in solidarity and to be helpful to our recovering sisters and brothers in this time. So I just, as we begin, tell me a little bit how each of you got connected with Mercy Street.
Well, yeah, I'll go first. Melissa, and I've been the pastor of Mercy Street coming up this summer. It'll be 5 years. And I've been a United Methodist pastor, I guess, 12 years. But interestingly enough, when I was a young adult and moved to Houston, Texas, I was looking for a church community, and through a friend of a friend, ended up at Mercy Street on a Saturday night. Mm. And what initially drew me to the room was I knew the pastor, but what kept me there over the years, and then now what really has kept me grounded in ministry, it's a room where I'd never experienced that many people telling the truth.
Wow.
In a way that there was so much courage and honesty and vulnerability. So
it's a no bullshit zone, huh?
It's a complete no bullshit zone. And it's something that's terrifying and completely, like, there's a gravitational pull to it. And so in serving the Mercy Street community, when I came in 5 years ago, I don't have a formal background in 12-step recovery. And so as I entered into the community was really my rabbi, my teacher. I was the student, and I now have been working a program myself for the last 2.5 years. And it's just, the recovery community has really taught me a lot, not only about my own life, but spirituality and how to stay connected. And boy, those gems are, they're really important in a time like this.
Tony, how'd you find this place?
Well, I'll start by just introducing myself. My name is Tony. I am a grief recovering drug addict and alcoholic. And so 17 years ago, I had gone to a treatment center, the Salvation Army ARC. And on Saturday nights, they would take a van out to Mercy Street. And on one of these Saturdays, I'd hopped on the van, and I've been there ever since. So I basically started my new life. Mercy Street has always been a big part of it.
Very, very cool. Well, as you, each of you have moved into this new time where you both are on a recovery pathway in your own spiritual journey and unable to be physically gathered with your sisters and your brothers that share with you in that journey, what's this look like for you?
You know, it's definitely different. It's taking some adjusting to. I believe we're kind of fortunate. We're, in a way, I've been telling the people that I work with, we've almost been training for this by the way that we practice our recovery, to really deal with change, to really deal with acceptance, and to walk into whatever situation there is. And a big part of what we do is just trusting God. And so we've just tried to walk that out in a different manner, and try to make this something that can be positive, even though it is so different and tough. But a lot of recovery, one of our lines is when the rubber hits the road, and this is one of the times when the rubber's hitting the road, and we kind of get to find out, like, where do we really stand, and how are we doing as our relationship to recovery and as our relationship to God.
Yeah, one of the sayings in the rooms, I think specifically in AA, is I got drunk and we got sober. And during this time where, we're encouraged to stay socially distant, I think a lot of people now have been using the term physically distant, but socially connected. I like that.
Yes.
Isolation and trauma are two of the biggest triggers and the things that cause addiction, character defects, all of that comes to light. And so isolation and trauma are really the things that each of us are facing in a new way. And so just some of those phrases from the world of recovery. In the program I work of Al-Anon, we have a list of do's and don'ts. And so I've carried that practice over into my day-to-day. There are things I'm going to do today and things that I shouldn't do. And really being able to take it all back to step one, which is we are completely powerless over this change that is happening. We're powerless over what's happening economically, to our health, to our loved ones on the front line.
As you've noticed people that are struggling right now in their recovery because they've been thrown kind of a whammy here with this thing, is it predictable? Is it the people that are 6 weeks in or that are more vulnerable than the ones that are 6 years, or is everybody kind of thrown upside down with this?
It's been different. We have gosh, we can do sayings all day, but we have one that luckily we're not all crazy on the same day. So this kind of jumps around. Some days it's me, some days it's my friends, some days it's newcomers, some days it's old timers. But it's so much about this is my relationship with something bigger than myself. So I can remind myself of that over and over again, regardless of where I am in my recovery is based on the power that I contain from my higher power. And to try to stay focused on that. And that's what we just spend a lot of time sharing, just, really turn things over. Something that's talked about a lot in our program is acceptance. And one of the key sayings in that is do not try to change the world, try to change yourself to fit the world that you're in. And so we've been applying that to this directly. We can't really change what's going on right now. And these are kind of the cards we've been dealt. So how do we deal with it? How do we try to make this effective and stay connected, even though we are physically apart?
Well, it sounds like the focus on higher power would be really closely connected with your own personal resilience in a moment like this, when life throws you a loop. And this isn't the first time we've all been thrown loops. I mean, sometimes it's the person we love walks out the door, or, it's the job we loved walks out the door, or some other, tragedy or painful thing happens. So I guess in some sense, if you've been working your recovery through all that life can throw at you, this is just another one of those things.
Yes, sir, for sure.
But go ahead.
No, again, and you go back and when I got into recovery, I kind of understood. Okay, they keep saying God. What does that really mean? But we're taught that we're beyond human aid. And just repeatedly being taught that from the beginning and over again, to really rely on something bigger than us. It doesn't, it's not, it's funny. I would think after I've done this for so many years and been through so many meetings and, given my message and sponsored people, that a lot of this will become easier. But to me, it's similar to my faith. I always remain human. So even though I know these things, it's the practice of these things that work. So intentionally remind each other, practice. It's not about how good our day's been. Have we shown up and done the practices that help to make this tough time more livable?
If you had a room with 50 people and you tried to put that on Zoom, that sounds like that could be the Zoom meeting from hell. I mean, so have some of these groups had to break down to smaller in order for it to work with this platform or whatever platform they're using? How does it work? How does the online room work with this?
The first for us in Houston, I guess it's like March 12th, 13th, 14th when the call was made, and there were still some 12-step groups that were meeting in person, but that quickly began to change. And Tony is he's our recovery advocate for Mercy Street. So he stays connected with, but a lot of them switch. So my home group, we regularly have in the room, it's a really large meeting. We'll have between 60 and 70 people in the physical room. Our Zoom call has consistently had around the same number, about 60. Wow. And it works beautifully. Everybody either raises their hand or we use the chat on the side for Zoom. But it has worked beautifully, and that has been an absolute lifeline to be able to see the same faces and hear wisdom from the folks in my home group.
So are all aspects of a program basically translatable to this context? I mean, you still work with your sponsor. Everything is still the same. It's just not the same.
That's right. That's right. And it's been actually kind of neat on that level, but it's also been difficult. It just, I'm in a lot of these meetings and it just doesn't quite feel the same. But I can remember when I first started going into the physical rooms, things didn't feel normal then either. Mm. So what we've learned is, again, just, the more that we do something, the more that we practice it, the more normal it feels. And I was in a meeting yesterday, our regular 12:15 meeting that we have, and there was over 80 people in it. But generally, if we were in the physical location, that's our normal meeting. And meetings are run so much similar to what we're doing right now. You have somebody that's a chair, somebody's talking, and everybody else just kind of sitting back and listen. So it actually it works quite well with Zoom.
Well, I guess no matter how many people are there, only one can talk at a time. I mean, so yeah, makes sense. What do churches need to be paying attention to right now in terms of people that are either a part of their fellowship that are recovering, or their neighbors, their family? What do we need to be paying attention to right now?
I know for us as a church, we Mercy Street's part of a larger church, Chapelwood United Methodist. And so early on, we made contact with all the chairs of the different 12-step meetings because they're all independently run. And so we made sure they knew our building was going to be closed, but pretty much all of those have gotten up and running online, and it's word of mouth. So the different Zoom links and passcodes. So I would say churches, especially pastors, if you are hosting a 12-step group in your church, reach out to whoever that contact was that you did the scheduling of the room in the past, and just provide some encouragement. Make sure you know for your own members. And then chances are a lot of pastors, those in leadership, know people in their community that are in recovery. And I would call and check in on them, encourage them. Yet again, I have been able to go to the Zoom rooms. And in addition to my meditation and prayer practices, my regular 12-step meeting is thoroughly grounding me in this moment. And I think that is, Paul, you and I have had this conversation over the years we've known each other. I think the recovery community is in the process of offering the 21st century church a beautiful, beautiful gift. It's grounded, it's around stories, it's around truth telling, it's around gratitude. So there may be some folks who enter into the rooms during this time because joining it through a teleconference is a little more comfortable than showing up in the physical room.
That's happening with a lot of different kinds of gathering that we're discovering that there's a lot of people that are coming into the room. Some of them kind of lurk on the edges, but these kinds of rooms are easy to enter, and that's a good first step. That's a good just to sneak into the room. I have learned so much from Mercy Street over the years, and I didn't say it earlier, but we worked in a collaborative relationship, kind of a strategic conversation. As I was coaching Chapelwood, we worked together a couple of years, and I just really appreciate what this ministry is, the way that you impact just hundreds and hundreds of people in the Houston area. If someone wanted to learn more about what you're learning on the journey, is a church that really pays attention to the recovering community, but also as people that are learning through the pandemic experience, how would they get a hold of you? How could they find out more about what you're up to?
Well, you can definitely find us at mercystreet.org.
Okay.
And but we are all over Facebook. What's interesting about all these Zoom meetings that you have to, the communication side of it, the adding of events on daily basis, really doing some level, I guess you would call promotion, because there's just a lot of information out there. And the staying connected part is, I know that that's what we're really focusing on, reaching out to members individually and just let them know that this is there. So we have a lot of options in a way to reach us, and we try to keep those options moving and ongoing, and keep posting something new on a regular basis so people have a chance to, when that feeling's right, maybe they'll sneak into a room.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, I think the website certainly, and Tony's email and my email are on mercystreet.org under our team listing. Over the years, we've talked to other churches, and what's interesting is we define recovery pretty broadly at Mercy Street. We'd say 100% of the room at Mercy Street is in recovery. Now, about 2/3 of those would say, yes, I work a 12-step program, but so many folks know what it is to be powerless, to feel like their lives are unmanageable. And so we have folks in our community that worked at Enron years ago, and they feel like they have been in recovery from that career path and that trauma.
I have a friend in that group. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was traumatic.
And I'm specifically thinking of a few folks, and so that was their doorway into Mercy Street. So we talk a lot about being a safe harbor, and we've had to reimagine that. We've struggled as a church. We want to be together. We want to be embodied, sit across the table and have that cup of coffee, and create a safe harbor. And so now we've had to trust in new ways that can be done in a virtual space. And I know for me as a pastor, quite candidly, it's elevated my prayer life. I can get in over functioning, I can get in strategic mode. And so to really be in a space now where I'm praying for our folks and praying that whatever isolation they're experiencing, whatever trauma or stress they're experiencing, as Tony said, they would know there's a power greater than themselves that can restore them and bring serenity and wisdom and courage.
Wow.
And we looked at Mercer Street in a way to open more doors. What I found in my years of being in recovery, and I also do this for a living in a lot of different ways, is that a lot of people, regardless of what they're suffering from, are not going to ask for help. Let it be if it's an addiction, depression, grief, or loss. And so the more that we can expand that word recovery, the more that we have realized that there's more people out there to help. Because sometimes they don't want to be labeled for whatever it is.
Right.
And so the broader we can make that door, we've found that that's been so interesting. One of the coolest things that we get to see on a regular basis, that we'll see parents come and bring their kid like that's in treatment and has been brought to Mercy Street. They're there visiting their kid. Well, the kid leaves and never comes back to Mercy Street, but the parents are there for good. And so that recovery term is, it's such a broad term. And in some sense, I believe we all are recovering. And this is a perfect, and I hate to use the word perfect, but this is an opportunity for us to learn together. And, how can we be healthier even in times that are very difficult?
It's a moment when a lot of people who thought they had all their stuff together all of a sudden realize that we all are feeling a little bit vulnerable, or a lot. And in that moment, there's always opportunity when we have that experience. And I know that you're a place that's really trying to be sensitive to that as people sort of awaken to their own inadequacy to get themselves out of the mess that they find themselves in. Which is a mess that they partly may have created, but it also messes get created that we didn't make, and we find ourselves in the middle of them all the time. And we're all in this one together. We really are. I just want to thank you for spending a little time, and I hope that this conversation is helpful to some of our friends that we haven't met that love all of God's children, and especially those that are in recovery or need to be. So blessings to both of you, and thanks.
Thanks.